Hey guys, it's Friction here, or Tech12. However you call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we are today going to be taking a look at the ISU 152K. This is going to be a review of this vehicle, and it is going to be a debate about a highly discussed vehicle in World of Tanks. Now this tank came out, I think about a year ago, or a bit longer, maybe 1.5. This used to be the original ISU 152. Do you remember the original ISU 152? That's where the debate has started. This vehicle that we have in the game right now is not the real ISU 152. Why is that so? Why am I telling you guys that this is not the original ISU 152? Well, because the Top Gun is not the BL-10. If any one of you have played World of Tanks and have seen ISU 152 in the last, let's say, 10 years, you will know that the Top Gun on this vehicle always used to be the BL-10, or I think it was the BL-10. The BL-10 can be found on the Object 704. This is the BL-10 right here. Very, very good gun. We can equip it on the ISU, on the Object 704. And this is what you used to have on the ISU 152. Wargaming decided, for probably rebalancing purposes, to remove the ISU 152's BL-10 gun, because this gun is very, very competitive. In the Object 704, you can see that its dispersion is 0.37 at 100 meters, aim time 2.78, and it has the god amazing 286 millimeters of penetration. Rate of fire also isn't too bad. If you have some equipment on it, you can have some pretty good DPM on this vehicle. So why did they remove it from the ISU 152? The ISU 152 with the BL-10 obviously had a few downsides. The BL-10 was not as competitive as on the 704, but it was still a tier 10 gun. Now they replaced it with the D4S. The D4S is not a bad gun per se, but it's not the BL-10. You no longer have the 286 millimeters of pen. The dispersion values are, I think, almost identical, but the aim time is also worse. The BL-10 had decent aim time, dispersion values were on par, and the DPM was, I think, almost the same. But the pen has dropped a little bit, the gun handling may be a bit worse, but other than that, it's almost the identical gun. Now, I'm not entirely sure how fast the shells did fly on the BL-10, but there could be some differences between the shell velocity, but other than that, you fired APCR and you still fire APCR as premium shells, so there is no big change. I'm talking about that if I'm looking at the ISU 152K, because the ISU 152K, God forbid, has the BL-10. It is not the exact same BL-10 as the Object 704 has. It's the BL-10A. Now this A stands for asshole. No, I have no idea. Wargaming, asshole move. Now people got very upset when they announced this vehicle, and I still remember the trailer had, I think, a ratio of like 10 likes and 20 million dislikes. Or it seemed like that, because obviously Wargaming took something away from a standard vehicle that we all loved. They put it into a premium tank that is, to be fair, still decent enough, but it stands, you know, it's a very bitter aftertaste that they do something like that, because you know that if they do that with the ISU 152, who stops them from doing that with any other vehicle? You know, legendary vehicles. Take away, I don't know, some tier 8. Let's check. What? Maybe the IS-3. Take away the IS-3's Top Gun, the BL-9, and put it in as a premium with auto-reloading capabilities. But, yeah, back to this tank. The tank, per se, is actually quite decent. It's not bad. Now, the BL-10, though, on this vehicle is a bit different. Now, the BL-10, they had to repurpose it and they had to rebalance it to fit the vehicle. So you have still the 750 HP alpha damage, so still pretty damn good, right? It's still the same as the D4S, so the ISU 152 has the same kind of alpha damage, or average damage. Then the pen is same as the other BL-10. Now, that's the nice part, 286 millimeters of pen. The rate of fire is worse than on the ISU 152, and the DPM in that case just isn't as good, since obviously the average damage is the same. The dispersion and the aim time have very, very different outlooks though. Because the ISU 152, obviously, if we take a look at now the ISU 152K to the ISU 152 and the ISU 130, because they're all based on the same kind of tank, you can see that obviously the ISU 152K does have similar stats, and those stats are similar because of the loadout I have on this vehicle at the moment. Because your base accuracy is 0.43, and with the equipment, with Brothers in Arms, with the, additional rations, the premium consumables, you're able to get it down to 0.38 dispersion at 100 meters. And the aim time also down to 2.8. Now the ISU 152, if we take a look at the configuration, you can see this vehicle has a similar configuration. It only lacks the premium consumable, but we could actually put the premium consumable on. We have Brothers in Arms on this vehicle as well. We have the exact same loadout that we have on the ISU 152, but you can see that you can get it even further down. You can get it to 0.36 dispersion at 100 meters, and you can also use special, equipment, bond equipment, to get it even further down. But they're very similar. All of these stats for the ISU 152 and the ISU 152K are very similar, except for the gun traverse speed. So to be able to actually swipe the gun from left to right, since it is fixed in the gun, or it's an SPG, it doesn't have a turret, and the gun traverse limit. But other than that, the average damage they are very similar. The aim time is similar. The pen is a bit nicer on the ISU 152K. Obviously 286 millimeters is the same as we had on the BL10. The rate of fire is a bit worse. But if you look at the ISU 130, that is a bit of an anomaly. This tank just has crazy DPM, 3440. Very good aim time and decent dispersion, but it does lack in the department of penetration. This is a kind of a special ISU 130. It used to be, I think, one of the premium ones that they sold very, very long ago. A very rare vehicle to get your hands on. Then they sold it again and I picked it up. And other than that, like, the stats are almost identical. The hit points are identical to the ISU 152. The ISU 152K has the same. The armor loadout, the only thing is that the ISU 130 only has 1,000 hit points. The mobility, though, there is a slight advantage to the standard ISU 152. It does have more horsepower and it's a bit faster, but other than that, it's almost the same experience. Now, obviously, I own both the ISU 130 and the ISU 152K currently in the garage, but since I only have the crew on the ISU 152K, you can see that my view range and my concealment is basically a bit better than on the ISU 152 and the ISU 130. Other than that, they would probably be very identical in that sense. All of these vehicles, all three of them, have 350 meters view range base, so it does actually coated optics, binoculars, I don't know, all that kind of stuff on your vehicle. But I much rather run a vehicle that does the maximum amount of damage because it has the BL10 gun, because its DPM is actually quite decent. 3000 is pretty damn good, if you ask me. Your reload time is 14.78 seconds with all the equipment currently on. I could make it even better if I put on special equipment, like special bounty equipment. Obviously, I'm not going to be spending the 5,000 bounty right now to get that equipment, but you catch my drift. So why is this vehicle such a hotly debated topic still? Well, because obviously, as I mentioned previously, that they took away the main gun from the ISU 152 and they put it in a premium tank, which is basically identical to the ISU 152, but it just has the BL10 gun. And the BL10 gun has been adjusted, and it just doesn't make any sense why they added this vehicle in and not just keep the BL10 gun on the ISU 152 and just, balance it accordingly as they balanced it on this premium tank. So why do I own it? Because it sounds like I'm a bit of a hypocrite to have this vehicle, when in all honesty, I shouldn't own this tank because it's a kind of a scummy move by Wargaming. Well, the thing is that they actually sold this in the Christmas loot boxes, and that's where I got it from. Because I think a lot of people did not actually pick this tank up when it was released. I think it was a bit of a probably one of the premium tanks that kind of failed a bit because people were petty, not petty, people were upset, and I can totally understand them. They didn't want to pick it up. I didn't pick it up either because I thought it was just a kind of a bad decision by Wargaming, and then they put it into the Christmas box. So that's where people actually did get this vehicle from. And I've played a couple of games in it, actually, and I do enjoy it since it's still the same as the ISU 152. It just has the BL10 gun. So let's take a look at the gameplay. Then let's talk about the verdict and if it's worth picking up or not, which player type it really fits, who should be looking out for ISU 152K, and why this is not a good way to handle premium tank releases in World of Tanks. Okay, the gameplay that I have for you guys is on probably the legendary map Sand River. It's one of the maps that I played quite a few games on with my Soviet tank destroyers. It's also one of those maps that hasn't changed too drastically, although I think it has changed quite a bit, but yeah, you adjust really quickly to the new maps, or to the maps when they got changed. We're in a tier 8 matchup, the perfect setup for ISU 152, because you don't want to have too many low tier tanks because you just maybe don't get enough damage. If you have a tier 9, tier 8 game, that's perfect because you always have these targets, these juicy targets to shoot at and do damage to. So the ISU 152K, what can we say about this tank? Basically from the stats, it's an ISU 152. And it's very similar to the ISU 152 except for the gun. The gun is a bit different. It's a BL10, and I think the look already by itself shows you it's just such a potent kind of vehicle. And it's a shame that they had to reuse this vehicle as a premium instead of keeping the BL10 on the standard tank. But still, we're going to judge it based on the performance and not based on the market practices from Wargaming. Because I still think there's quite a decent tank in this, because the ISU 152 is still a decent tank, and this certainly goes into the category. That BL10 gun still hurts, and it hits like a truck. Now obviously 750 damage, that's the average damage you get. 25% RNG can go up to maybe almost 1,000. It can go down as low as 500 if you're unlucky. So all in all, that 685, it was a low roll, but it wasn't the worst low roll that we could get. And yeah, I mean, the aim time, the reload time, at least the reload time is actually not too bad. 14 seconds, 14.8 seconds if you have all the equipment on, if you have some kind of premium consumables, but other than that, you also get like 15 seconds. So that's almost like that's 4 rounds per minute, and you can still be quite combat effective with that. The accuracy, on the other hand, what can we say about it? It's a Soviet tank. You're not expecting the most accurate gun with Soviet tanks, even with tank destroyers. You're not expecting the most accurate kind of guns, but what you're expecting is a heavy hitting vehicle. And that's something you have signed up for with this tank. Right there you can see we hit the VK for 709, we hit the RHM for 811, and it's just so satisfying shooting tanks for that amount of HP, with the BL10 gun. And it's kind of sad that the BL10 gun is gone from the object, or from the ISU 152. But the ISU 152, still with the D4S, they added basically a gun that has almost the same values, but the gun is just it just looks a little bit less threatening than the BL10 did. I'm not sure why. It still is long. I mean, size doesn't matter, but it's just that the thing that the BL10 is such a legendary gun that that's how you kind of envision the ISU 152. And even though they didn't change the statistics too drastically and kept the vehicles basically the same or very similar in the characteristics, it still changes, or it still gives you a sour taste of why they did it. Because the next time, if they do something like that again, which obviously could happen, it could go into another direction where they really do, nerf the standard vehicle and they add it in as a premium kind of object and they make it more powerful. Like the only thing that comes to my mind immediately is the HWK30, which is basically a RU251, almost similar to it at tier 8. So if you go up against tier 6 and tier 7 vehicles, you're obviously going to be thrashing them around. But since your armor isn't as great, it's actually not too terrible, if you can say that. But yeah, it's just something that I think Wargaming shouldn't delve into. If they want new premium tanks, they should just make new premium tanks. I don't care. Most of the tanks in this game are made up. They never existed. They weren't even on blueprints sometimes. So why not make up something and add it into the game and not just fiddle with the standard tanks that we have in the game. But back on topic, the ISU 152, as you can see, almost 3000 damage. This vehicle does hurt very much if you do hit. But not every single shot is a direct hit. Not every single shot is going to be a one that is going to be able to deal damage. And actually at the moment it looks quite comfortable for our team. Looks like we're going to be winning this game. And we're pushing on every single front. The enemies are sitting at the base. They're sitting back. They're trying to defend. And the mobility on this tank is actually not too bad. 40 kilometers per hour is not the best. It's not as good as the Scorpion or the SU 130 PM, but you're still able to get around from A to B. The one thing that you have to keep in mind though is that you only have 20 shells with this tank. You can see right now we're down to 12 shells remaining, so we've fired 8 shells, and 20 shells is not a lot, but you know, with the rate of fire, how games run, how fast games end, I think it's going to be enough for you. But still, you only have 20 shells. Keep that in mind. I'm not sure if the ISU 152 has more, but we're going to take out the T-34 right here. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is that this tank has no armor. The 90 millimeters of armor that they proclaim that this vehicle has is not even going to work at range. It's not going to be working at tier 8. Anyone is going to be able to penetrate it, and you could see with a focus fire in just a second we lost all of our 1200 HP, and we're going to lose this game now in a second. I can tell you guys this is quite unsatisfying ending, because most of our team, if you look over, most of our team is low HP, and we had full HP right there, and we got annihilated by an ISU 152, by the T-28 prototype, and by the Panzer 58 Mutz. I think that was the final shot that finished us off. So the ISU 152, obviously, it has the same issues that the standard ISU also has. So if you get hit by anything, your HP is going to melt. You only have 1200. That's the main balancing point of the vehicle. Anything that shoots at it is probably going to go through. There are some lucky bounces. The gun mantlet has a few thick parts, but other than that, your vehicle is very vulnerable. That's how it should be. So I'm going to give you guys my verdict on this tank. Who should pick up the ISU 152K? Should you even pick it up? Well, on the one hand, I would not support these kind of market practices. I didn't pick this up because I did not want Wargaming to think that it's okay to add in vehicles that are basically rip-offs of standard tanks, and you know, to reduce the amount of stuff or the amount of things that you have on the standard vehicles. So I think you should not support that behavior. Now obviously a lot of people did get this tank. Either they bought it or they did get it from the loot boxes, and that doesn't mean you should get rid of this tank. Obviously not. It's a good tank. It's an ISU 152, has the BL10 gun. If you have the right equipment on it, it's just as good as the ISU 152. And to be fair, Wargaming didn't do a terrible job of balancing it. Now, if you really love your ISU 152, you love it to death. You love it, you miss the BL10 gun, you should get this tank. But at the same time, you shouldn't, because you should not allow Wargaming to dictate that or to allow that kind of behavior. But if it's ever on sale, because I don't think Wargaming sold a lot of these things, at least before the sale, so I can imagine it getting into the black market or something like that. It's a good tank. It's an ISU 152. There are no unpleasant surprises. It has a BL10 gun, which in comparison is a bit worse than the standard ISU 152. So at least the standard ISU 152 is still like better in a direct comparison to the ISU 152K. But it's a bit of a slap in the face for all the guys who played this tank, for all the people who love the BL-10 gun on the ISU 152. So pick it up if you love the ISU 152 and you want it as a premium tank. I think there is no wrong thing to pick this up. But just keep in mind, Wargaming, if they see that this tank is going to be a financial success, it's going to be a huge success for them, they will maybe try to do that again on some other premium tank. Keep that in mind, because that's very important. We do not want this to happen again. Once is enough. The ISU 152 with the D4S, still good enough. Wargaming did kind of get away with a blue eye there, but the people will remember. World of Tanks, the World of Tanks folks will remember that. That's very important to keep in mind. So this is a direct warning also to Wargaming to not do that again, because we do not like when they fiddle with tanks that we have played for 10 years and they all of a sudden think that they should take away the gun and repurpose it in a premium tank and be like, oh yeah, that's just a balancing kind of thing. No, we do not stand for that. We don't like that. You should not be doing that. So, gotta finish this review off. See you guys on the next one.